believe this is 18. I think I said the wrong number last episode. But welcome into episode 18 of Glory, Glory, and Roll Tide. It's just me again today. No DJ. I forgot that DJ was going somewhere, so I was about to text him. I'm like, hey, you want to go ahead and record? And then he texted me asking what time it was in the Eastern time zone. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, you're not going to be here today. Probably going to be short because I really don't know what all we're going to talk about. I did see that Ty Simpson has declared for the draft. So that, yeah, I would imagine this is going to be a very Alabama dominant podcast today. But Ty Simpson does declare for the draft. I personally don't agree with it, and that's not me saying that as an Alabama fan. That's me saying that as like Bill Parcells' quarterback drafting rule type of person. And if you drafted October Ty Simpson, then or if he's getting a draft grade based off of what he did in October, totally understand it. But like what he did as a whole, I think he needs to come back for one more year. And I say that for multiple reasons, and one of them is he hasn't actually played football. And when I say played, I mean actually played in multiple consecutive games like he did as a starter, like he did this year. Since he was a senior in high school, he sat behind Bryce Young, he sat behind Jalen Milroe, and so he finally gets the starter role and does well, all in all, like really does. I know he was hurt back half of the year, so he didn't play as well as he could have. But there are some things that I think he could have done better and would have benefited from by coming back to play one more year, especially another year in the system, another year as kind of seeing the game slow down a little bit because the game probably did speed up just a little bit for him over the course of the year, with it being the first time that he's actually played since his high school years. And so the game slows down a little bit. You have a much better understanding of the offense, much better understanding of kind of what everything that's going on around you. And you can kind of all use that to your advantage in year two. I think the jump from year one to year two, whether you're a first year starter as a junior to a second year starter as a senior, or a starting freshman to a starting sophomore, is massive. And I think playing time definitely helps with that a lot. I also just think that he's got a chance to kind of hopefully benefit from a little bit improvement all around him as well. But I'm pulling up Bill Parcells' draft rules. And Bill Parcells' draft rules, if you don't know them, they're pretty extensive, and they still work almost to this day. Like there's a couple outliers, but generally speaking, they still work to this day. It's a 3-year starter, a senior, draft a college graduate. He needed to have 30 plus starts, 23 plus wins, a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 60% completion rate. Obviously, it's designed to find mature, proven leaders. Obviously, exceptions like Cam Newton. I think Drake May is another one. There's a handful of other ones there that are exceptions to the rule. But those, I think, are general good rules to kind of go with, especially because if you're looking for somebody that's played a lot of football, then this kind of helps you get there, especially if they're going to be expected to play right away. Now, while I don't know how Parcells quarterbacks did, like for him, like if you apply these rules to the general, some hits under the Parcells rules, and this is from King Fantasy Sports from 2024. Would have been Matt Stafford, Drew Brees, Andrew Luck, Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, and Brock Purdy. Some notable misses would have been Kyler Murray, Cam Newton, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Bust, though, that did not meet these rules include Mitch Trubisky, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. Now, Sam Darnold's obviously had some wild ups and downs over the course of his career. Seems to have, I don't watch a lot of the NFL, but I did watch him like torch the Commanders earlier this year. But those are just some ones that I think that it helps you avoid going into when you're looking to draft a quarterback. And so that's part of the reason why I think Ty Simpson should come back. Another one, like I said, is because like he really hasn't played a whole lot of football since his senior year in high school, and I think he would benefit greatly from coming back to play another year. I would assume that means Austin Mack is and Keelan Russell, who a lot of people, Bama fans, were calling for, are going to be considered for the starters next year. Austin Mack obviously came in relief. I don't know what the future holds for either of those two, but it will be interesting because you're going to be looking at another starter at quarterback for the Crimson Tide next year. And it's going to be your third different quarterback in 3 years, and I guess fourth in five, if that's right, fourth and five or fourth and six, which in college football is either a good thing, bad thing. I don't know. Time really tells. And there are some schools that obviously see that happen quite a bit. But it's always nice, I think, when you have some consistency at quarterback play because you kind of know what you're going to get, and guys are going to be well experienced with what's going on. Now, obviously, if you look at the four teams remaining, Fernando Mendoza was not at Indiana last year. Carson Beck was not at Miami last year. Trinidad Chambliss was playing Division II ball last year, and Dante Moore uh, was behind Dylan Gabriel last year. So, what the heck do I know? Because all of the four remaining quarterbacks that are in the college football playoff didn't play for their respective teams last year, where they were either on the bench or playing for a completely different team. So, what do I know? I actually don't know anything, and so who knows? My opinion, though, Ty Simpson should come back for another year. Bama did land Hollywood Smothers out of the transfer portal. Hollywood Smothers was the running back for NC State last year. Let's see, pulling up his stats according to ESPN: 160 carries, 939 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think if you include the bowl game, I don't know, these numbers do seem different than what I had seen earlier. I was seeing that he was 1,000-yard rusher, had 7 touchdowns versus 6 that ESPN is saying that he had. But he's 1,000-yard back that you're potentially looking at coming over to Alabama. And the last time Alabama had a 1,000-yard back was Brian Robinson, and that was, 3 years ago? And so for everybody that is saying that these running problems are DeBoer's fault, well, Bama hasn't had a 1,000-yard running back since at least 2021. Yep, B. Rob ran for 1,300 yards in 2021. Bama also hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver since 2021, and that was Jamison Williams. And so it's interesting that DeBoer gets blamed a lot for some of the stuff that really hasn't happened since Nick Saban was there. And it's not even like it was Saban's last year. It was well before that as well, like 2 or 3 years before Saban's last year as well. Um, while, you always love seeing a skill guy get added, my concern with Alabama is the offensive line and the offensive line coach. I want to avoid calling for a coach's head or calling for a coach's job, but I think it's important to note that the reason why I'm hesitant on where this offensive line currently stands is one, because I've grown up in North Carolina, watched North Carolina my entire life, with the exception of the past couple of years because I've taken them less seriously, and that includes football and basketball. But the current O-line coach for Alabama was the last offensive coordinator for North Carolina when Larry Fedora was at Carolina. And Larry Fedora's last 2 years at Carolina were less than unimpressive. And the offensive line for the past 2 years, from what I've heard preseason from different sports radio shows and other guys, or especially guys in the Alabama area, is that Alabama's offensive line should be pretty good. It has not been pretty good at all. And I know nothing about offensive line play, but when I hear Cole Kublik, who was an offensive lineman, and Brooks Austin, who all this guy does is grind tape, talk about how bad and how poor some of these fundamentals are on offensive line play, whether like they just have no idea what these guys are doing. That concerns me because ultimately that comes from coaching. Now, we'll say that this line that is currently playing for DeBoer doesn't really match what he had at Washington. He had a much smaller line when he was at Washington as far as like guys' total weight, but it seems like this went more beyond than just guys that didn't fit his sort of profile for what he wanted out of an offensive lineman. I've seen they landed a couple offensive linemen out of the portal, but guys like I can't really comment on offensive line play. I don't know who they got or not. I know they lost a ton, I think, from their O line in the portal, and the only reason why that concerns me is, yeah, like we lost guys who it's never good. If you know an offensive lineman name, now there's certain exceptions to that. And Caden Proctor's one of those just because of how much fun it was watching him. But he did get beat a lot. Parker Brailsford, I like him a lot. He came from Washington with DeBoer. But he got hurt late in the year, was a shell of himself. Is kind of what he was earlier in the year. So we'll see how that kind of pans out. I don't really know what to expect there. Um, I did see a rumor. Now it comes from Instagram, so take this for what it's worth. It's a rumor. That's really all it is, and it's an Instagram rumor at that. But it is funny that Cam Coleman seems to be favoring Cam Coleman, who's a really good receiver for Auburn, seems to be favoring Alabama in this his portal recruitment. I have no idea if he will actually commit to Alabama, but it would be so funny to me if he did, and it would also be huge from an offensive standpoint. So we'll see where that goes. Again, really short one today. I imagine that we're going to go to once a week from here on out since neither Bama or Georgia are playing. I guess a quick preview from what I'm looking for in these two college football playoff games remaining. I'm pulling for Ole Miss. As I've said, I like Pete Golding. I don't think Miami's offense can keep up with Ole Miss if it turns into a shootout. I did hear that Miami's like a 3.5 point favorite. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. I haven't actually checked. But I think if this is almost like a race to 17 or race to 20, we'll go race to 21, and whoever gets to 21 first is probably going to win. Miami's defense is legit, but I don't know if their offense can score 21 points, only because they haven't done it in the previous two playoff games so far. They've needed some defensive stops and even a defensive touchdown just to get to the point totals that they did have. In Indiana, last time Oregon and Indiana played, it was at Oregon's place, and I think Indiana just outplayed them, outcoached them, out-executed them, and I'm kind of looking for the same thing here. I think Indiana's going to be the more physical team. It's weird saying that against a Dan Lanning team, especially kind of where Oregon is and what he's turned Oregon into, but and especially when you look at kind of what the talent gap is. But I think Indiana's going to be more disciplined, and they're going to be playing together as a team better than what Oregon is. So I'm going to go with Indiana and Ole Miss advancing to the national title, but we'll see how that goes. Like I said, short one. We're probably going once a week after this, but we'll talk to y'all next week. Roll Tide.